Well, I'm excited for next Sunday. It is Friend Sunday, our annual Friend Day. So I sure hope that you've gotten some of the invitations. You've been passing them out or sending them out. I've sent mine out, and I'm excited, hoping that some of my friends will also be with us next week. How many of you have seen the 2005 romantic comedy Fever Pitch? Wow, not many. I'm surprised. This is one of Mike Dion's annual events. Anyhow, it's a funny story about a guy who's a Boston Red Sox fanatic. Now, here's an interesting tidbit you might not have known, although if you hadn't seen the film, you didn't care. But anyhow, Fever Pitch was actually first released outside the U.S. and Canada by the title The Perfect Catch. And the reason it was titled that way is because it's actually a remake of a 1997 British film called The Perfect Catch about soccer, not about baseball. But anyhow, the movie Fever Pitch is about a guy named Ben who's 30 years old. He's single, and he meets a workaholic gal named Lindsay. Lindsay finds him to be so sweet, so charming, so attentive to her. She can't figure out how he could still be single at his age with his personality. But then baseball season begins. And Ben's obsession with the Red Sox becomes an obvious problem. His whole life is wrapped up in that baseball team. She sees him on ESPN in Florida at the Red Sox spring training, acting like a fool. Then she invites him to take a trip with her to Paris. But he explains that Seattle's rolling in and the Sox are 3.5 games behind the Yankees, and they really need him. The most offensive part of the movie is that Ben uses toilet paper with the New York Yankees insignia on it. Now, that's just inappropriate. The movie has a sweet ending, as most romantic comedies do, but I think it's a good picture of how the entertainment God can take over our lives and bring chaos and destruction. So, in our world as a whole, certainly in American culture, one of the biggest idols that consumes people's hearts and their minds is the God of entertainment. We look to the God of entertainment to make us happy. We look to the God of entertainment to fulfill us and make us feel alive. He consumes our time, our money, our devotion, our minds. Television, computers, gaming systems, smartphones, Alexa, Google Assistant. We bring the idol of entertainment right into the privacy of our homes so it can be adored and followed every single day. Sports has so engulfed our culture and lives that our favorite sports team controls our schedules, or maybe our happiness. Our mood is determined by whether our team's winning or losing. Sadly, many people know more about their famous star's life than they know about God or about God's Word. And all this is just evidence that our minds and our hearts and our lives have become distorted by our obsession with entertainment. Now, before we go any further in this lesson, allow me to clarify the fact that entertainment is not wrong in and of itself. We've seen this with each of our things, right? Now, interestingly enough, though, for centuries, the church stood solidly against every form of worldly entertainment, recognizing it for what it was, a device for wasting time, a refuge from the disturbing voice of conscience, a scheme to divert attention from moral accountability. And so churches and preachers railed against the theater, watching those moving pictures, or playing with face cards. Now, perhaps the church went too far in coming down so completely against entertainment, but the dangers are clearly there. And it's a hard thing to keep in the right balance and perspective. But just like the other things we've discussed in this series, food and sex so far, entertainment can also be a good gift from God. But Satan takes God's good gifts, as we've seen, and twists them into something that draws us away from God. And so, it isn't wrong to watch television. It isn't wrong to go to a movie. It's not wrong to be a fan of a sports team. But all these things have to be kept in the right perspective in our relationship with God. One indication that the God of entertainment has taken precedent over God the Father, and the computer decided not to show the picture, but that's okay, is the way many people give far more time, attention, money, and effort to their entertainment rather than their relationship with God. The picture was a picture of tailgating. Kyle Idleman, in the beginning of his chapter on this subject, starts with what I think is a revealing illustration. He says, try to imagine a world where on Sunday mornings you set a backup alarm for the alarm to be sure you're not late for church. When Sunday comes, you load up the car, you head to the church hours before the service begins. You do this because getting to church early is a must. The later you go, the further you have to park. And sometimes you may have to park as much as a mile away from the church building. Can you imagine that? When you park in the parking lot, you see all the other members. They got their trunks open and their hatches open, and they've got tables out, and they're tailgating. And there's a buzz around the parking lot. They're talking about how great worship was last week and can't wait for the worship that's going to happen today. It doesn't matter if it's sunny or warm or cold and snowy, they're all out there. And when the doors open, the crowd files in and everybody stands on their feet the whole service, singing their praises and shouting their amens. There are even groups of people that come with letters on their shirts, and they sit together and it forms a message. God is so good. Or preach the gospel. Or get your tithe on. And after several hours of worship, everybody's hoping that the sermon will go into overtime. I know that's hard to believe. How is it that we can so easily offer those kind of sacrifices to the God of entertainment, but offer so little to God the Father? Now, the God of football, the God of baseball, the God of basketball, the God of hockey are not the only entertainment deities. The God of video games is pretty popular these days, right? Studies show that nearly 1 in 10 kids between the ages of 8 and 18 is classified as clinically addicted to video games. A 15-year-old video game addict is described as displaying all the characteristics of a heroin addict. The telltale collateral damage of a heroin addict: withdraw from family, withdraw from friends, and lies to cover up the addiction. How about the God of Facebook? That's another popular God these days. Consider the amount of time we spend on social networks. Users of Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat spend an average of 50 minutes a day. And if you're on all three, that's almost 3 hours of your day. The God of TV, though, is perhaps the most universally popular God of entertainment. The average American watches more than 4.5 hours of television every day. Now again, let me repeat and emphasize the fact that entertainment is not evil as a whole. Like food and sex, entertainment is a gift of God, something that's good until it's turned into a god. What's the purpose of entertainment? Well, consider the fact that God made it this world full of entertaining things, right? How can we not be entertained by God's creation with all of its beauty and wonder? How do you think God intends for us to respond to the rainbow? You run to the window to see a rainbow and look for it? How about the mountains or the ocean? How about the galaxies? See, God didn't just give us a bare, functional place to live. He gave us a universe of wonders for our entertainment, our enjoyment. And what did God expect people to do on the seventh day of rest that He commanded? We can't sleep all 24 hours. At least most of us can't, right? Maybe a few of us can. So worship and entertainment can be rest for our mind and our emotions. Our God's a God of joy. He wants us to know joy. 1 Timothy 6:17, He richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Entertainment should be life-giving, a means of engaging with our world rather than retreating from it. It should not be a substitute for life. But as with all things, the problem comes when we turn the gift of God into our focus and our purpose, the end goal, the thing we worship. Let's talk about Solomon for a minute. One of the great figures of the Old Testament. He provides us a good, bad example. He's the king, son of King David, third king of Israel. In the book of Ecclesiastes, which is basically his journal that he kept while pursuing entertainment, looking for pleasure and purpose. In chapter 2 and verse 1, he said, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So he had all this wealth and all this power, and he spared no expense trying to entertain himself. He started with laughter. He found no lasting joy in that. Picture him getting the greatest comedians to just come and entertain him all the time. Next, he tried a life of partying, but he quickly discovered its emptiness. He tried to entertain himself with great building projects. They didn't satisfy. He brought in choirs of men and women. Of course, he had his own harem. But in the end, he declared, meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. The problem was he was trying to make a good thing into the main thing. He was looking for the meaning of life in amusement, but amusement is meant to be a sideshow, not the main event. And just as we've seen with all the counterfeit gods so far, there is a bait and switch tactic that goes on with the gods. They offer the high, but they deliver the low. The pursuit of food leads only to an insatiable hunger. The pursuit of sex ends in shame. And the pursuit of entertainment actually results in boredom. How can that be, right? Have you ever wondered why so many people in our world today are just bored? Science writer Winifred Gallagher says, boredom is largely a recent problem, absent from many cultures. Our word boredom didn't appear in English until the industrial age, which is about the time when we expected to be entertained. And the modern entertainment began to evolve. Translators among African tribes struggle to come up with an equivalent to the word boredom because there's a disconnect. Their culture doesn't understand the concept. The closest word they can find is tired. The word amusement actually comes from the world of worship. Amusement has its root in the word muse. And the muses were female Greek gods who were said to inspire great writing, inspire science, artistic achievement. They were the gods of reflection. When you add an A to the front of muse, it brings the idea of something lacking. So amusement is the lack of inspiration, the lack of reflection. We seek amusements because we don't want to think. You ever come home after a long day and you just want to plop down in front of the TV and not think? Just vegetate? And certainly that's fine up to a point. But here's where some of the danger begins. Instead of inspiring our bored and apathetic existence, the God of entertainment makes us even more that way. More bored, we seek more entertainment, more boredom, and the cycle goes on and on. Have you ever watched the fourth straight reality show? Flip through the channels and you realize, there's nothing good on TV. 30 years ago, Neil Postman wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And in that book, he argued that popular culture is dumbing down our world at a startling fast rate. He died in 2003. Imagine if he were alive to see what's happening even today. The God of entertainment promises life, but he takes life away, and our ability to truly think one 30-minute sitcom at a time. Solomon used an interesting phrase 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes as he defined the parameters of his search. And that phrase is under the sun. And so he was looking everywhere under the sun. And he had seen many things under the sun. And he had found no meaning under the sun. No wonder he was tired and frustrated and empty. His sights were aimed too low. What Solomon was really looking for is out there. It just isn't found under the sun. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian philosopher, put it this way: creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger. Well, there is such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim. There is such a thing as water. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is I have been made for another world. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy, it does not prove the universe is a fraud. Probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing. This is under his argument for God, the problem of pleasure. But ultimately, the gods of pleasure cannot satisfy our deepest desires. What we need most can't be found through the stomach, or through sexuality, or through entertainment. What we need and what we desire is pure, unadulterated joy, and that desire finally leads to God. At the end of Solomon's book, he reached that conclusion, chapter 12 and verse 13. Here now is my final conclusion: fear God and obey his commandments, for this is everyone's duty. So we're made for God. And until he is our greatest pleasure, all other pleasures of this life will lead to emptiness. And Augustine expressed it well nearly 15 centuries ago. Our hearts are restless until they find rest in thee. A.W. Tozer wrote about the restless heart in an essay called The Great God Entertainment. He said, the more vibrant our inner lives are, the less we need from the outside. That is, the more active we have in mind and spirit, the less need to fall back on external media and other input. He wrote, the present inordinate attachment to every form of entertainment is evidence that the inner life of modern man is in serious decline. He wrote those words in the 1950s. Now, clearly, there's a place in life for relaxation through various forms of entertainment, including sports and television, movies and music and games. But the question is, do we seek to fill the spiritual vacuum inside us with empty entertainment? Or is it the empty entertainment that's creating the vacuum? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Allow me to suggest that the God of entertainment's not only taken many captive to secular entertainment, but the God of entertainment has also taken over much of Christian worship. In modern-day Christianity, true spiritual things are being pushed aside for entertainment. Leonard Ravenhill wrote, we believers are lean, lazy, luxury-loving, loveless, and lacking. Christ is now wounded in the house of his friends. As you probably know, for the first 8 centuries, All churches, underline that, all churches worshiped without instruments because they knew that the singing with their voices was the purest form of worship as God commands. After some churches began to use instruments, other Bible-believing churches continued to oppose the use of musical instruments, including the Baptists, up through the 1800s. Another 1,000 years. In our entertainment-oriented culture, many churches find themselves trying to outdo themselves with more and more elaborate additions to worship to entertain people. What began with special music by a choir has become a full orchestra with professional singers. What began as an organ or piano now is a full band with lights and smoke. And just like in this picture, you can't tell which you're at. Are you at church, or are you at your club or a concert? Where are you? What began as dramatic readings and skits has now become full Broadway stage productions with dancing and flag waving, and in some places, aerialists, like Cirque du Soleil. Now, you may laugh at that. I saw some pictures of the praise band in front of the church with several ropes hanging in the auditorium with people doing that kind of aerial stuff. Draws them to Vegas. Why not church? As long as those who come to worship enjoy what's offered, then anything goes. The expectation is that sermons will be shorter and wittier and more positive. And anything in worship that can't be jazzed up must be abandoned as boring and unappealing, because there's nothing worse than being bored. That's one of the main reasons that most churches today don't take the Lord's Supper every Sunday. They have more entertaining things to do with that time. And the subject of blood and suffering is kind of negative and gruesome. So the problem with this entertainment orientation is that the very reason an object of worship is forgotten. God is the audience in worship. Worship must be directed to Him, not to the whims of the worshipers. Our worship is to be God-centered, not man-centered, not entertainment-centered. To worship God in spirit and in truth, as Jesus taught in John 4:24, is to worship from the heart in exact obedience to God's commands, not according to our desires. God's regulations for worship set out in the New Testament are neither boring nor out of date. They're designed and given to feed us spiritually. Now, as we've done in each of the counterfeit gods so far, let's ask some personal questions for introspection. First of all, what are my favorite forms of entertainment? What's your leisure diet? How wholesome is it? How unwholesome is it? Do I watch high-quality movies when I watch movies? Do I read well-written books? Do I listen to edifying music? Do I look for intelligent TV broadcasts? And of course, if the entertainment is ultimately unwholesome, then it doesn't belong at all. It's not a question of how much, it just doesn't belong. Number two, how much time am I spending on entertainment? Is it an appropriate amount of time, or has it really taken over? What other better uses of your time should you be giving attention to? And so here we have the Ephesians 5 passage that was read as our scripture reading. Look carefully then at how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Now here's an interesting question. Where and when am I exhibiting the most commitment, passion, and excitement? Is it in spiritual things, or is it in other things? Am I truly more invested emotionally, physically, and otherwise in my relationship with God, or my relationship with my sports team, or my vacation spot, or my TV shows? Question number 4, what is affecting my worldview the most? Is culture and pop culture having a greater impact on my character and goals and mindset than is God? and is God's Word? And then finally, am I addicted to entertainment? Am I addicted to video games? Am I addicted to Facebooking or web browsing or binge TV watching? Perhaps a fast from entertainment would do some good to see if things are out of balance or out of control. Maybe turning off the TV or logging off Facebook or turning down the music or unplugging the game console for a short time would help us to turn our eyes on Jesus. And let's always keep in mind the promise of Jesus from Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If we're looking for rest and recreation just from entertainment, we're looking in the wrong place. Let's remember the offer of Jesus, and in Him we find what we really need. Here's a helpful acronym called MEDIA. The M stands for a message. What is the message and how is it coming across of the media that I'm partaking of? The E, effect. What effect is this having on me? The D, damage. Will I suffer damage from this? I is a good one. Instead, what could I be doing instead? What more productive or constructive thing? And then the A stands for ask God. Does this glorify God? Does God approve of this? Would I feel comfortable with Jesus being in the room? Let's end with Kyle Idleman's devotional thought, Jesus, my passion. And again, I put it on your handout so you could have it to think about later. The God of entertainment promised us a circus. And in our adult world, which can be gray and drab, filled with obligations and responsibilities, that sounded pretty good. We looked for attractions and surprises and amusements to create in us a sense of wonder. Maybe we could find it in music or in movies or in games or in sports. The God of entertainment was hawking them all like the carnival barker. Step right up, be amazed, be amused, come one, come all. But in the end, the music was flat and the movies were formulaic and the games were rigged, and the circus would leave town, and we wait impatiently for another one to take its place. Then we found our passion in Jesus. And if you haven't experienced it yourself, I get that it should seem ridiculous. How could a dusty old Bible character compete with big-budget movies or action-packed games or soulful tunes? But once you know Jesus and passionately pursue Him, it seems ridiculous that we thought we could ever find what we wanted in a movie screen or a website or a playlist. Jesus said in John 10:10, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The real thing we're made for, the real thing that our desires point to, is not found under the sun, but is found in heaven above. True life and joy and happiness are found in God, and everything else leaves us wanting. Let's be sure God the Father is on the throne, and He is the one we're worshiping. And all the entertainments of this world are just being used for some little fun and games here and there, but they're not our life.